Good evening, everybody. Katie Lesage here. Jonathan Kozol, Savage Inequalities. It has been over 25 years since the release of his book that got the United States attention regarding the improper conditions of our school systems, the double standards that were limiting educational opportunities for students of poor communities, and that of color compared to students from white, middle to upper class areas. He brought compelling evidence that showed how the school's financial structure and the discrepancies in local property wealth fostered educational inequalities and also resulting in teacher shortages, salaries, and lack of updated curriculum. When we look at our schools funding, about 42% of all the funding comes from property tax and other local funds. It continues to make it extremely difficult for districts to create, hire, and supply effective materials that make high achievement possible in school systems if they don't have the adequate funding that is needed. One of Kozol's school districts he discussed in Savage Inequalities is East St. Louis. When we look at East St. Louis today, they still struggle significantly. About 32% of their students are only meeting or exceeding state standards. Our country continues to see a teacher shortage and teachers who are highly qualified to effectively teach in these troubled areas. In this district I work for, though we have a lot of great things happening, we had a shortage of 20, just in special education, 20 teachers positions that were not filled. We've now filled about half of them. The others are filled with long-term subs that may or may not be qualified to teach special education. Others, schools that have the subs change every week. So the kids have a lot of inconsistency, and most likely a lot of them aren't special education certified. So we still see these struggles. Looking back at East St. Louis, one of the issues that they still struggle with adequate education funding is they can't compete with the wealthier neighborhoods. Even if they attempt to increase the property tax, the value of the property is so low, it does little to impact the supports they need, and only pushes more people out as they raise the taxes. People can't afford to live there. Similar conditions are still seen in New York City, and becoming even bigger concerns in some other cities as the increase in unemployment rates go up. The values of the communities are decreasing, and we see stuff like this happening currently in Detroit as the jobs have disappeared. The people are leaving, areas are abandoned, and there's just it can't keep up with what it needs to provide for the district. When we look at William Julius Wilson, we ask the question, where have all the jobs gone that once made up a large portion of our lower skilled workers? Have things really changed since these two men brought to light such inequalities in our society and education system? Not really. William Julius Wilson will tell you that in the civil rights movement, really only benefited a small percentage of middle to lower class and educated blacks. If you look at the period of time, the heart of the city, like Chicago, areas which today we would consider the ghetto, had working men and women that could provide for their family. They were low-level jobs, but they supported the basic necessities. The overall employment rate in the 60s was actually much lower than what we're seeing today. Other things with the changes in our country's economy over the last 25 years, the growth of the computer revolution has changed the need to for lower skilled workers. It's not as needed. As lower skilled jobs continue to disappear, so do the hope of our lower class citizens. Wilson's belief was that if our people continue to experience chronic failure over long periods of time, these failures will directly impact their families and their communities that they live in. If we look at today, we see this impact significantly when we look at our prison systems. 4 to 5 of our violent crimes that are committed are done by a black male who falls in this lower social class. And so we ask ourselves, what are we going to do about it? The problems are still there. Sure, there are great things, great changes that we see in the districts we work for. I've been very fortunate living in Omaha and working for a great district that just definitely has its difficulties in the system, but being such a large district, we also have a large property area that's covered in wealth that can make up for a lot of that funding that we need. We also have a huge local funding program, such as the Sherwood funding, that's funded through a lot of the members of the Buffett family, who give tremendous amount of money for updates in technology and training, tutoring, materials, things for curriculum. We have our learning community that is extremely beneficial, and additional funding to our schools that have really opened up how the schools can connect with the community. And so we are very fortunate in that. But Wilson will say that we need to create futures for our lower class. We need to give them hope, and by giving them jobs that help to see a future again, is going to increase that mentality that, that it's not future chronic failure, that we have hope and that we have something to live for, and it's worth taking care of and worth benefiting. Yet the other day I walked into a gas station and it said now hiring $10 an hour. $10 an hour, really? No way could someone today survive off of $10 an hour. Very effectively, I should say, you could survive, but it would be very difficult, let alone take care of a family of, 2 or more on $10 an hour. It is sad and unmotivating, and that does not create a future for someone and their family. That the lower skilled jobs that we do have, the income isn't even there to make a living and keep up with the changes in society. We also can't keep raising property taxes in our neighborhoods to try to make up for the loss. But things that we can do, we can work to vote for better officials in our local, state, and federal offices that look at how funding is adequately used to improve our school systems and our communities. As I said, like in Omaha, we have great education opportunities in our schools, and with our local and funds, we also had over $100 million bond that was passed to remodel a lot of our buildings and update security and systems and windows and flooring and just making the environment of the schools better. But that doesn't occur everywhere else. It's not happening. So we're very fortunate in that, but we need to look at how can we get that by voting across the board, getting people that can help make those changes. And a lot of people felt that when Barack Obama was elected into office 8 years ago, it was the hope and belief that having a black man as president in office could greatly impact diversity and equity. I believe it was truly one of Obama's hopes and dreams to really make these changes and to accomplish this. But we can't put that all on one man. We've been fighting these issues for centuries. Though he wasn't able to accomplish all that he had planned, there were great efforts made to fund programs that focus on revitalizing the poor, their neighborhoods, and helping enhance community ties and families, such as Choice and Promise Neighborhoods, Promise Zones, and Strong Cities, Strong Communities Initiative. However, most of these efforts, when we looked at the full scale, only reached a fraction of our poor families of color and lacked the size and focus. Obama's care intentions, look to help improve our health care and taking care of our children and people, and the intentions are good, and there's good and bad things about it, but it can't be all on one person to make these changes. So what can I do? What can we do? We have to remember that access to an adequate education is a civil right, just as it is freedom of speech and religion. With that being said, it is my belief that it is the duty of our country to uphold this right to its fullest and look to greater efforts to make these changes. There are states that have gone to court to fight for funding because they can't meet these adequate conditions, but a lot of it gets held up in litigations and court systems, and there's been successes, but states are willing to fight for it. But however, as an individual, as a parent, as an educator, and as an American citizen, I believe it is my civic duty to help create a learning environment for my children and my students that teaches them to be passionate about their hopes and dreams, that they learn to be respect and responsibility, that we teach them to ask questions and to encourage them to see solutions through effective problem solving, give them opportunities to apply real life experiences to their learning and connect it to the real world around them. And most of all, to teach them to be kind to all, regardless of their race, gender, religion, social class, and ethnicity. It starts with us as educators, and we can't control all the baggage that comes in every day in the door, but we can teach kids empathy and to be passionate about their dreams and to be respectful regardless of race, gender, religion, and social class. Thank you.